you, Omar. So, nous connaissons haïtien mieux, right? So we have to start with on est respect. So when I say on est, if you want to respond in kind, you should say respect. On est. On est. On est. Thank you. My name is Winnie Lamore, and I'm the Managing Director of the Haitian Creole Language Institute of New York. And I'm also the Haitian Creole instructor here at CLACS, the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies at NYU. It's been a really exciting time for me here at NYU as I've been able to bring a little bit of Haiti to a space that traditionally hasn't been open to, a space that hasn't traditionally been open to in inclusivity. So it's been nice to be part of a department that's all about including cultures that are super, super important, especially Haitian culture, which paved the way for so much in the Caribbean. I started the Mother Tongues United event sort of on a whim a couple of years ago. I have no idea how it came to me, but I'm obsessed with language. I always tell people that language is my activism. It's my entry point into reconnecting with IET. It's my entry point into advocating for myself as a Haitian American and advocating for others in my community. So Mother Tongues United was a way for me to bring together different language communities because I was curious. I'm a Sag, so we're all about learning all the time for no reason, just to learn. So I was curious how other language communities in the Caribbean were dealing with their own issues with their own languages. And so the first Mother Tongues United focused on 3 language communities, Creole, Creole Haïtien, Papiamentu, which is a Dutch-based Creole, and Garifuna. So that was really exciting. And then it kind of morphed into thinking about other French-based Creoles in the Caribbean. And we find ourselves here at the 3rd iteration of Mother Tongues United, which will focus on children's literature in the Caribbean. And so I put on events like this primarily to share knowledge and really provide a space where we can have really difficult conversations about difficult topics, but also to press myself to do things that I think are important. So I'm currently trying to put together a children's curriculum. So this was my way of sort of diving into, well, what are the children doing in the Caribbean, or who's working on behalf of the children in the Caribbean? So here we are, here you are with me on this kind of wacky journey through language and activism and figuring out where my space is and who I am as a person and where language plays a role in all of that. So tonight I'm joined by 3 really wonderful women. I somehow find myself surrounded by Black women all the time, which I love. They nurture me and help me be better. So I appreciate all of you for being here tonight. So we have 3 panelists with us tonight. Immediately to my left here is Keisha Wiel. Keisha Wiel is a 3rd-year doctoral student in the Department of Anthropology at Temple University in Philadelphia. So she came all the way up from Philly to be with us tonight. Her research focuses on different language ideologies around the Creole language Papiamentu. Okay, thank you, Keisha, for being here. We have our second panelist, Riva Précil. Riva is the author of Anaëlle and The Mermaid, a wonderful children's book written in her native tongue of Haitian Creole. So it's actually on sale tonight if you want to check it out. It's in the lobby. Definitely support Riva and her work. She is also an accomplished musician, singer, artist, all-around creator. She just creates, and everything that she does focuses on IET. So Riva, thank you so much for being here. And last but not least, my woe, my boo, is Carmel Balan. Carmel is the founder of Port Academie, which is an online digital library that houses wonderful digital resources that focus on Haitian scholarly work and Haitian studies. And it's the one place online where you can find anything that you need related to IET as it relates to the academic world. So Carmel, thanks so much for being here with us tonight. Should we dive right in?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay, let's do that. Oh, yes. I encourage, we're all about social media. So the title of tonight's event is purposefully #Mother Tongues United, so that you know where to find us online, you know who to share it with, and that people can find us. So I'm encouraging our panelists, I'm encouraging the audience to tweet, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, what else is there? What did I leave out? Snapchat. I'm not on the Snap. I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm all about those Insta stories. So if you want to do an Insta story, please feel free to do so. As long as you use the #Mother Tongues United. And our second hashtag is actually the theme of my work this academic year at NYU, which is #Recentering Blackness. So I'm just going to let that settle right there. So if you want to also #Recentering Blackness, I do encourage you to do so. All right. Oh, I said a lot. Should I let y'all do some talking now?
Sure.
Can I ask you some questions? Oops. All right. I'm going to ask you some questions. So the first question that I'd like to start with has to do with space. I always tell people this. I'm obsessed with the idea of space. I consider I was born in IUT but raised in Brooklyn. So I consider myself Haitian American. So I occupy multiple spaces, but no space at all. So I'm in this sort of in between. And I'm always thinking about, well, how do I remain connected to IUT from a distance? Because I'm not always there. And the way I remain connected is through language. So I want to talk to you about bonds. How important is language in maintaining a bond for you to your culture? There are mics, plenty of mics.
Well, I guess I'll start then. So how is language used as a bond to maintain to our culture? It's interesting, because personally for me, I wasn't born either in Aruba and Curacao. I was born in New York, in Queens. And I grew up in New York City. And for us in the diaspora, the Dutch Caribbean diaspora, there's so few of us compared to you guys from Haiti or to Jamaicans or whatever other Caribbean island. You know, I mean, we were sort of this tight-knit group, and a lot of it centered around our ideas about culture and what our culture stood for. Because I tend to say that we from the Dutch Caribbean are fluid in that sense. We have this sort of fluid identity where, because, you know, to the south of us you have, especially from the ABC Islands, you have Latin American influence, and then the rest of the Caribbean that surrounds us, we sort of have this identity where we can kind of blend in wherever we go. And, you know, I think that's the importance of Papiamentu for our culture, is this idea that helps us stand out a little bit more, because we do have sort of that fluid identity where, you know, we will go to the salsa parties and the compa parties and dance hall.
You go to compa parties?
I did in high school. Yes.
Okay.
You know? Okay. And that was a way for us to sort of stand apart in that sense, was knowing our culture and being immersed in it and speaking our language. That was something, and even for those of us who grew up here who didn't necessarily know how to speak our language, we understood it and we embodied it in that sense. So that was for me how sort of we grappled with how language was tied to identity for us.
Beautiful. Oh, let me grab this. Well, first of all, I love what you said about space. Very interesting. I was wondering where you were going with that when you said you were obsessed with space. Because I myself was born here in New York. My mother is American and my father is Haitian, but we moved to Haiti when I was 5, which is a really great age for children to pick up a language. So I learned Creole at 5 and French a few years after that, and moved back to the United States at 15. that's a very sensitive age to kind of have an entire cultural shift. At 5, it's kind of like, oh, whatever, we're moving around. But as a teenager who's already kind of established establishing their identity, it was a very difficult time for me to have that shift. So Creole for me has always been a really big part of maintaining that piece of that identity itself. Also, I find that when you meet a Haitian person and you tell them they're Haitian, their first question is, "Parle Creole?" "Parle Creole mo." So you have to essentially prove yourself immediately, and if you have the slightest accent, it's like, just below you're discredited. So first and foremost, for credibility, I find that it's very important. You need it. You will not get away with not being fluent in Creole. And also the importance of it, I think in Haiti is very stressed because there's such a huge battle of French and Creole, and a lot of friends of mine who were 100% Haitian, who were born and raised, some of them only spoke French. So to me, as a newcomer, that seemed like something that was a little bit backwards. So I always make it a point to have Creole in my back pocket.
Thank you. I'm a bit nervous, so please be a little patient with me.
Can we give Carmel a round of applause for her nervousness?
Thank you. Creole was actually the first language that I learned at home. So it was my first language. Till this day, no one believes that I was born here because it was a way for me to bond with my grandmother, you know, my uncles, my aunts, and everyone else. So I started going to Haiti at the age of 2 and was always excluded from, you know, jouing, I said jouing. Jouing a Creolish word. No, but playing wousle, or just, you know, interfacing with them. So for me, it was bonding with my family. And getting there, and Riva said it, just having them accept me. Because as a Haitian American, you're, you know, casted as a diaspora. You don't know how it is for us to live. So a lot of my conversations with them was making them feel or accept me as a Haitian as well. And fast forward now, I'm too Haitian. So that was how I use Creole to bond with family, and even now with friends, and Winnie can attest to this. If I'm in the group with, and some of my friends are here, if I'm with them and they're all Haitian, Creole. Because there are some jokes that you can say in English and then Creole, and it's totally different.
So all 3 of you mentioned this idea of acceptance and being part of a community, and one of the main reasons why I really started thinking about this idea of mother tongues united and using that term very purposefully, mother tongues, is to think about what does it mean to be a speaker of a historically undervalued language. So a historically undervalued language is defined as a language that suffers from systemic, social, and cultural degradation. So it means its speakers are often shamed for speaking that language, and Creole Haitien falls under that, Papiamentu falls under that category. And I want to hear from all of you. Have you ever been shamed for speaking your language? If so, how did it fuel the work that you do today? Take your time. It's a heavy question.
Growing up here, you know, there was a stigma growing up, you're Haitian. So yes, I was, you know, or the reverse, going to Haiti and my Creole wasn't, you know, up to par, so to speak. But growing up with a grandmother that was so passionate about culture and language, I was never ashamed. Although there were forces, if you will, trying to make me ashamed of being Haitian, of speaking Creole, I loved my culture. So that was something to me that it was never, you know, I'm not going to speak Creole, I'm ashamed of being Haitian.
Yes, is the first answer. Shamed constantly. Well, first of all, in my music, some of you know, I released an album last year, and I intentionally wanted it to be an exclusively Creole album, because that was a way for me to sort of dedicate it to my culture, to what's nearest and dearest to my heart. And then later on I could always, you know, have a jazz album, have an R&B album, that can all come. But the foundation, it needs to pay respects to my ancestors and to, you know, what makes up the fabric of my identity. But many people during the process of creating that album said, well, you have such an advantage. You speak English so clearly. Why would you throw that away and sing in Creole? That just seems so like, exactly. So I mean, initially would be very upset and offended by that concept, because how can you even continue a conversation like that with someone who already feels that you're putting yourself at a disadvantage? I mean, yes, we are the minority, and obviously Creole music is not mainstream, but the sentiment behind it is easily misunderstood. Same thing with the book. When I was writing the Anaëlle and The Mermaid, it was because there was such a lack of any literature for children in Creole, and Haitians particularly would suggest, like, why would you not write it? I went to an illustrator who I met in Haiti, and he was amazing. I loved his work, and I wanted to work with him. And the first meeting that we had when we sat down was about my vision and what the story was about and what I wanted to do. And he said, Creole, you're writing a poor man's book. Why would you write in Creole? I was like, all right, thanks so much. It's great to meet you. I'll be finding someone else to work with, because clearly not in the same school of thought. So all the time, constantly, in all of the work that I do, as long as it has to do with Creole or embracing the roots of Haiti, it's always questioned. And that's why I fight so hard to continue along those lines, because it's so frequently shunned or shut down or just frowned upon. But I don't let that deter me from, you know, keeping on.
Yeah, it's interesting, because for me, I remember my elementary school was predominantly Haitian American kids, and you know, I do remember the stigma that was geared towards a lot of the Haitian American kids, and I remember, I guess, thinking in terms of that and how we were sort of envisioned. And for us, you know, nobody knew where our islands were. Nobody knew what language we spoke. I remember once being on the phone with a friend and my mom saying something to me, and I responded back, or in Papiamentu or in English, I can't remember how I responded back. And I remember my friend just telling me, like, what is that? What is that, some type of Spanish you guys are speaking? And I remember at the time just feeling like, well, you know, I'm 11 or so, I don't have time to explain what this is. So I'm just gonna be like, you know, and I just said, yeah, that's what it is, and, you know, just kept the conversation going. And as I look back on my childhood, I realized that a lot of it was this idea of, because we come, you know, because my parents come from islands that are so small that not a lot of people know anything about them, I was constantly explaining, as you know, from a young age, what my language is, what my culture is, you know. And I think that sort of took a toll on me, where it became a point where I remember, you know, my sister and I, we didn't really speak it at home. So our parents would speak to us in Papiamentu, and then we would answer back in English a lot. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that, I don't know necessarily if we were ashamed, but it was just sort of this idea of, you know, we don't want to have to put that burden on a child. You know, I mean, even our teachers would be like, oh, well, where is that? What is that? What are you guys speaking? You know, it was something that drained you after a while. And I remember, I think the first time I actually started to place some sort of acceptance and pride, not only within my culture, but in the language specifically, was I think my senior year of high school, when I was starting to learn not only about Black American history and ideas of Blackness, but also I was like, okay, well, what is my history? You know, my parents didn't come and grow up in the United States. My parents grew up down there. What is my history? I realized that my history was apart from the rest of the Caribbean, even though it was this idea of like we wanted to fit in. And I think that was the main thing for us, was that growing up, in particular for me, I'll speak for myself, we didn't know where to fit in, and that's where that fluid identity comes from. You know, like I said, because we were such a small community, it was this idea of like, well, nobody's from the Dutch Caribbean, so do we fit in with the Latinos? Do we fit in with the English Caribbean or the French Caribbean? Where do we go? So I think it wasn't until, like I said, my senior year of high school and then going into college where I sort of actually started to embrace my language and wanted to know more about it and know more about my history. And it was through that I mean, I really sort of found my identity in that sense. You know, for instance, I think when it was, I think maybe my freshman year of college, and I had this professor who said, oh, well, if you're from the Caribbean, I know this other professor who's doing Creole work in Grenada. He's working on the French Creole that's dying out in Grenada. You should totally meet him. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. So I went, and, you know, we started talking, and he was just like, oh, you're from Aruba and Curacao, so you speak Papiamentu? And I was like, yeah, sure, I speak that thing, so what, yeah. And he was just like, that's just so amazing, like, you know, and he started ranting and raving about this language, and I was just like, okay. And that, I think, was the first time that I actually started to think seriously about that language, of what it meant and how powerful it was. You know, and it was because of that meeting that I am where I am today, like having taken pride in that and sort of realizing, no, I should be promoting this, I should be working on this.
There's a story that I always like to tell about when I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade. Some of y'all probably have already heard this, but I had only been in the States for a couple of years, and my English was, you know, children learn English very fast, but I hadn't yet learned the English word Haitian. And for some reason, it had not clicked in my head as an English word that I could remember. But I remember one of my classmates coming up to me and asking me, "Are you Haitian?" And I didn't know what she was asking me. I just heard "are you" and then blank word in my mind. But I could feel the feeling behind the way she said Haitian. Like, I mean, as a child, you know, children are super receptive to emotion. So right off the bat, I was like, I don't know what she's asking me, but I don't want to be that. And I kind of held on to that for a long time, despite how we were raised at home. I didn't reconnect with Creole till I was a little bit older, as I was also trying to connect more with family and trying to figure out my identity as someone who didn't quite fit in all the spaces that